Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. My name is Françoise, and today is the first episode on working with your cycle. I'm going to be recording 4 episodes, 1 episode for each phase of your cycle, and how to really harness the power of that particular phase for your fertility and also for your emotional well being. The point of departure is the power of menstrual cycle awareness, and it's something that's come up on previous episodes of the podcast. So, what that means, menstrual cycle awareness, is that you start tracking your cycle, not just to know when you're ovulating or when you might expect your period, but to really sort of keep track throughout the month how you're feeling, what your energy is like, what the vibe of the day is, what sort of things get you excited. Um, and what you will see once you start tracking your cycle in this way is that there are certain patterns that will emerge over the months, and that gives you an enormous amount of insight into how your cycle works for you and how you can start to plan your month and your activities around your cycle. And because this is a podcast about fertility, to also really for each phase of your cycle know what you can do to support yourself and to support your fertility and to really um, work with some of the most difficult aspects of your cycle, um, to to maybe allow you to feel a bit more in control, that it's not that your hormones are taking over or that you feel just, in the depths of that 2 week wait you feel the despair, the anxiety, but that you know what's coming and that you know how to deal with that, because that's the biggest difference between men and women. We have a different hormonal composition throughout the month. No 2 days are the same for us because our hormones change all the time. And once you start to really understand and feel how your hormones affect you, you can use that information to plan your life and to develop tools that help you during each phase. And I know that if you're on a fertility journey, then you're probably already very much aware of your cycle, but in a way that's not necessarily empowering. You're probably tracking your ovulation because something needs to happen that day, right? Be it a transfer or another procedure or just, something in a bedroom to get that baby there. Um, that's something you're very much aware of. You are very much aware of the 2 week wait and that there's nothing you can do during that period other than, take some basic good care of yourself, but there's nothing that you can do during that 2 week wait to change the outcome. And then when you do get your period, there's the grief that comes with that. So a lot of those phases of your cycle um, can become really hard or not necessarily empowering, as I said. So that's what I really want to help you with these 4 episodes, is that we start shifting your perspective a little bit and seeing like, okay, but in every phase of my cycle, there's a superpower that I can really use to improve my experience. And it starts by understanding how your hormones work, how they work for you, because there are, and I'll be giving you some general like guidelines throughout this episode, but that's like the first rule in every book on tracking your cycle or working with your cycle. It's different for everyone, or it can be different for everyone. So that's as a starting point, I would say start tracking your cycle. Get a journal, get a piece of paper. I use just the notes add on my phone, where for every day I just put in like one sentence how I feel that day. Maybe give it a grade. And say, okay, what's the overall vibe of the day? What works for me? And then sometimes, I just write, I'm on top of the world today. And sometimes, like yesterday, I woke up and I just felt like I'm a complete failure. What's wrong with me? What am I doing with my life? So now I know, okay, that's a day 22 feeling. I can start recognizing that, and also means not take it that seriously anymore. It all starts by tracking your cycle, becoming aware of the patterns on your day. But there are some general rules of thumb that you can definitely use. This week, we're going to talk about the luteal phase. So that is the 2 week wait. It's the phase where I'm at right now. So it was very useful for me to dust off my knowledge and see like, okay, what are some of the things that I really need to work on this week or work with. But I wanted to start off with this phase because I feel it's probably also one of the most difficult phases of the cycle, together with getting your period, when you're trying to conceive, because there's nothing you can do to, or not really, right, to affect the outcome. It's just waiting. Time slows down. Um, it's a real exercise in surrender. But we are not really good at that, generally speaking. If I talk about my own experience, this is the time when symptom spotting is at its peak. I can remember just walking around, touching my boobs all day long, just trying to see if I was feeling something there as an early pregnancy sign. That was another thing I did, Googling everything to see whether it was an early pregnancy sign. Turns out everything is an or everything can be an early pregnancy sign. So it's not helpful at all. But the amount of time that I've spent on Google, just Googling symptoms, is unbelievable. Yeah. Another thing that you can do to sort of try and get back that control over your journey is maybe testing. I've had some really negative experiences with early testing myself, so I try to steer clear from of that. But maybe it's something you do. I've heard women like lists of the most ridiculous places where they tested and just the amount of money spent on tests as well. Um, Nothing I say is a judgment, by the way. I'm just, listing a couple of things that I've noticed in myself that you may be doing as well. If you feel that they give you a sense of power, go for it, right? If you feel like they are making you more anxious or they are things you're doing to try and deal with that discomfort that's there, the not knowing, the having to wait, and you want to explore whether there are different options, then this is the episode for you. Because there is that general feeling of hopelessness and anxiety, I would say, in the 2 week wait. The other side of the coin is that this is actually a time in your cycle where you can reach a state, an emotional state that's often very difficult for people to reach, and that's the state of surrender. So that's definitely something I'll address today, how you can use all of these intense emotions that are here during these 2 weeks, or usually it's like the last week, right? That's the most intense. How you can really work with that to get to that state of surrender, not as a permanent state of being, but as a practice that you can keep coming back to whenever in life you're facing something that's out of your control or that's really difficult. So what I will do in this episode, and this will be the structure of the next episodes as well, is that I'll quickly dive into what's happening at the hormonal level so you know what's going on in your body. And I will explain how that affects you at the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual level. And I'll also provide you with a couple of strategies to really harness the power of this part of your cycle to make it work for you rather than that it's something you are subjected to or that you have to suffer through. So let's start with your hormones. And I briefly touched on this during last week's episode as well, but let me give you a quick recap on how your fertility works. Once you reach puberty, there's this central command station in your brain, the hypothalamus, that starts sending messages to one of the glands in your brain, the pituitary gland, saying that it's time to start reproducing. You're a teenager now, in the olden days, that's when you start having kids. So in response to that message, the pituitary gland in your brain starts releasing hormones to your ovaries. Um, it releases follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. This follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, tells your ovaries that it's time to start maturing egg cells. And then once it's time for ovulation, the luteinizing hormone tells your ovaries that it's time to release the egg from the follicle that it's been growing in. So that's how ovulation happens. Now, while that egg is still growing in the follicle itself starts to release estrogen, a certain type of estrogen, to prepare your uterus for implantation. So that makes sure that your endometrium, which is the inner lining of your uterus, is nice and plump and really welcoming. And this is also, if you are in fertility treatment, this is the thing that they measure before transfer, whether the endometrial lining is thick enough to really create a good environment for your embryo. After ovulation, so after the egg has been released from the follicle transforms like um, a caterpillar into a little butterfly. So it transforms itself into a temporary gland called the corpus luteum. So this temporal gland starts to produce progesterone, which basic function is to sustain a pregnancy. But if there's no pregnancy, then progesterone drops and your uterus sheds its inner lining. So that's when menstruation happens. That's a very quick overview of what happens to you throughout the month. All of these different hormones are released throughout the month at different times, at different levels, and it affects how you feel. It affects your body. It affects your mood, everything. This episode is all about the 2-week wait. So what happens during the 2-week wait is that ovulation has happened, the egg has been released from the follicle, or the embryo has been transferred if you're in treatment. And so that corpus luteum has been formed from your follicle and has started producing progesterone. You see a drop in estrogen because the womb has been completely prepared for that embryo, and now progesterone is there to help you sustain a pregnancy. And this is visible, at a physical level. One thing that can happen is that your digestion slows down because of progesterone. And that's the reason for that is that your gut then has extra time to extract and absorb nutrients from your food. You may also notice that your appetite may ramp up. So this is all to get more nutrients to that embryo. It's really your body trying to make sure that there's enough food for that baby already. Progesterone also makes you want to slow down. It makes you want to stay in and rest. It literally wants you to go within. So if you feel less social, you know, during these 2 weeks, that's completely normal. If you feel like, more cautious, that's actually your body trying to protect you against outside influences and really saying, no, we're growing a baby now. So you need to stay at home, stay safe. You may also notice that you become more assertive and protective of your boundaries, or, if you're not really aware that this is happening, it may mean that you are lashing out more, that you are reacting more than that you're responding. This is, part of what people call PMS. But there's a deeper layer there. It's about setting boundaries because it's no longer all about you. It's also about that baby. So it's your body, again, your hormones saying this needs to be a safe space. And what will happen or may happen is that you have a heightened sense of intuition and gut feelings. Again, the positive side of that would be that you are very much attuned to what's going on around you, to protect yourself, to feel, what will be the right course of action for you. But because we are not really aware that this is happening, you may feel this more like you are more sensitive to criticisms. You may view things with a critical eye. There are these nagging questions that keep popping up. All of the feels during the 2-week wait can be traced back to that heightened emotional state. You feeling very vulnerable. But like I said, all of these things are personal. So it's really up to you as well to observe yourself on a daily basis and write down how you feel, what your energy is like, what the vibe of the day is. Also, because all of this may be affected by the fertility drugs that you're taking. So it's really about you forming your own personal compass as well to navigate through that 2-week wait. But as I said, there are a couple of general rules of thumb that can help you survive the 2-week wait. Because things are happening with your digestive system, it's really important that you focus on your food, especially because low blood sugar levels can make you more moody during this time. So it might also be more of an effort to go out and search for healthy food because you're more primed now to get fat and salt, so the not so healthy food. So one thing you can do is to actively start preparing more for the 2-week wait by making sure, like, this is going to be the last episode that I will record, will be on the period of ovulation, but that's actually a time when you have a lot of energy. So you can really use that time to make sure you have some healthy meals available to you during the 2 week wait to give yourself that extra level of support so you don't fall so deep. Um, Overloading your schedule may also mess with the inner need to withdraw in the 2 week wait during the 2 week wait. So on the one hand, you might want to distract yourself from feeling and thinking too much, but because there's also this desire to go within and to experience more of yourself, that's sort of an innate desire. Um, that can create tension, especially if you've got a lot of work on your plate or a lot of social events that sort of require you to be your best self, your most productive self. Like, this is not the time for that. So, if you want to distract, it can be good to make sure that the work that you do during these 2 weeks, and it can be either at work, or at home in your free time, make sure that the things you or the tasks that are there for you focus on rounding up certain projects. So, you can increase your feeling of well being by crossing things off of your to do list, but not starting anything new or doing anything that requires too much from you, socially speaking. Cleaning and organizing is perfect work. Reviewing any type of work that needs you to have like a bird's eye view because you have that heightened state of intuition and overview. This is a really good time to do review work. So, yeah, you can actually work with the things you do during these 2 weeks to use the power that you have now, the power of with progesterone. It's all about already creating that nest for your baby. So that's why cleaning and organizing can work so well during these 2 weeks. There's this innate desire to organize stuff. Um, and that's why rounding up projects can also feel so good. So those are some things you can do in terms of your activities to make you feel better. But for me, the most crucial part of the 2 week wait is that you get to work with that inner critic. So with that part of you that feels so vulnerable, so uncomfortable, so yeah, so anxious. There's, it's really confronting to see that part of yourself that's so fragile. And yet when you can really embrace that state of yourself, there's also a lot of power there. Because the discomfort you feel during this week can actually turn into your biggest ally. There's this great book about working with your cycle. It's called Wild Power. I'll put it in the show notes. And I wrote down this quote. They said, "The things you've neglected in yourself, the needs you've sidelined, the feelings you've consistently overridden, the historical woundings and intergenerational ancestral patterns that have been relegated to the subconscious can all break the surface as they seek conscious recognition and integration." That's the opportunity that's there during the 2 week wait, is to see what is underneath the surface, what is calling your attention. With everything that's coming up, all of the feels that you're feeling, what wants to be seen there. And during the 2 week wait, you are facing some of the most intense emotions possible. First of all, there's this attachment to a certain outcome. You want to have a baby. In Buddhist philosophy, this is where suffering starts, being attached to an outcome. And again, not a judgment at all. We all do this, right? We all want to have a baby. We all want to have, our life look certain ways. But by seeing how attached you are to that idea and how that makes you feel, if you can take a step back and, yeah, in Buddhist philosophy, it's also said you need to become the witness. So seeing what that attachment does with you, with compassion, looking at that, that's a huge, huge liberation, or there's potential for liberation there. The same goes for being confronted by the fact that you are not in control. That's also like one of the most intense emotions possible, that you are not in control of life, that you're just riding a wave. You're in a river, it's flowing. You just have to follow the river and see where it will take you. It's a fact of life, and it's something that's so hard for us to accept. Because we grow up thinking that we are in control, that if we work really hard we can achieve whatever we want, that life is about being decisive and plotting out a course and following the steps to get there. It's all about manifesting, right? Feeling the right emotion and getting into the right vibration, and you will get whatever you want. And then the 2 week wait shows you, no, you are not in control, and it brings you to your knees. Maybe there's other deeper wounds or questions about your life that surface now. Maybe you're lashing out at your partner all the time, and then there's a huge piece of information there. Something is going on there. There's an emotion that's not being met, or there's an emotion underneath, that lashing out. There's a need that's not being met. So again, becoming the witness, taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm not going into that story that's always there between me and my partner, but I'm going to look at what's fueling that story. What is the bigger thing, the bigger need that is showing itself now, you know? And rather than lashing out all the time, I can be with that, look at that, and then, when I'm calmer, discuss it with my partner and see there's some if there's a need for a structural change. Not saying like leave the relationship, but seeing if there's a way to relate differently, because apparently there's an unmet need that resurfaces time and again during the 2 week wait. Maybe and this is something that will come up when you're journaling on your cycle. Maybe you see like during the 2 week wait, I always encounter that feeling of being inadequate, not feeling like a woman, feeling like I'm to blame, that it's my fault that we're not getting pregnant, that my body is, faulty. There are all of these ideas about self that come up and that actually they're tugging at you because they need to be looked at. They are telling you all of these things that you're telling yourself, they're wrong. Please look at us. Please look at us, at these thoughts, and really look at us and start feeling into the emotion that's there, feeling into the stories that you're telling yourself, and also start seeing if they're true or not. What proof do you have that they are an absolute truth? What proof do you have that you are not a woman because you're not getting pregnant? What proof do you have that you are to blame? I'm not giving you the answers here, right? These are larger questions about these convictions that you hold about yourself, that, the 2 week wait is actually inviting you to see why are you telling yourself these stories? What does that do to your mood? And what are the alternatives? If you're exhausted by fertility treatment, you feel like, okay, I cannot take this anymore. Maybe go with that. Go and see what is the need that's not being met. Is there something that you could change about fertility treatment so that it would feel more bearable? What is it that you need right now? This is actually a big sign that you need a break. That, you cannot do this again next month. And so I don't want to belittle these feelings at all. I'm just saying that there's an invitation here to really go within and see if there's a deeper insight that you can gain from them rather than just trying to push them away. So, how do you do that? How do you work with these heightened emotions? First of all, with the menstrual cycle awareness, with the tracking, with knowing that part of this is just hormonal, that at this phase or during this phase, there are these more heightened emotions that can already help a lot. So don't blame yourself for feeling this way. Know that this is part of the process. And also don't force yourself to stay positive, and don't think that this will harm your chances of getting pregnant. This is actually a hormonal thing that you're feeling right now. So um, it's actually showing you that your hormones are working really well. Um, don't force yourself to stay positive. It just creates extra stress on your system. What I suggest you do instead is that you witness how you try to deal with the discomfort. So I mentioned a couple of things at the start of the episode: symptom spotting, Googling all of these symptoms, testing, early testing. It's all fine if they make you feel fine. But if you feel that it's actually getting you more stressed, or it's just a way of coping with a difficult situation, then it's an invitation really to see if you can be with the discomfort instead. So not take any actions to deal with it, but just be with the discomfort. It's also a quote from Wild Power here that's, you know, can you give yourself the space and permission just to be messy and uncomfortable? Can you breathe into those parts and let them be? Because that is really where surrender starts. Just allowing the discomfort to be there. How do you do that? First of all, it's really important that you create space to fully embody your emotions. You can meditate on the emotions. And really, what I mean with that is if you feel very anxious, for example, you just sit and you focus on the feeling of anxiety in your body. And that's all you do. And whenever, your mind wants to start telling you stories about why you feel anxious, why you shouldn't feel anxious, what you should do to feel less anxious, why it's a bad thing to feel anxious, right? Whenever your mind wants to engage with the emotion, go back to the physical sensation. How does it feel? Where do you feel it in your body? Maybe even place a hand there. Okay, breathe into the sensation. What's the color? What's the shape? What's the density? Is it hot or cold? And you just keep going back to the physical sensation. And maybe then you notice it starts to change and shift and you follow that. That's a really good way of developing that practice of surrender, of being just with the physical sensations. Other things you can do if meditation is not your thing, you can also draw how you're feeling. If you play music, you can. I had a client once who played the piano, so I told her just, in on the piano, play how you're feeling. Doesn't have to be in a pretty song, just make those notes come out that you feel inside of you right now. If you love dancing, you can really embody that emotion in dance. Dance how you're feeling. Again, it doesn't have to be pretty, it has to be true and authentic. This is what it feels like to be so anxious. This is what it feels like to feel that there's no hope, or to be so angry, whatever it is that you're feeling. If you're a singer, you can give it a sound, or also if you're not a singer, like giving a sound to emotions is also a really great way. Just feeling like, how would it sound, this anxiety? And then just saying, letting it come out and creating space through sound. It's a beautiful way to work with that. Another way to practice surrender is to turn things over to a higher power that is not your thinking mind. And I phrase it that way because I know not everyone believes in God or in a higher, divine power. What this is about is really, you know, the fact that you're not in control also means that your rational mind cannot come up with a solution right now to make you feel better. And it cannot tell you, there's nothing you can think or do to get pregnant right now during the 2 week wait. So turning things over to a higher power that's not your thinking mind means that you ask for guidance. There's a beautiful ritual it's designed by an author called Tosha Silver. I'll also put her book in the show notes. It's Not Your Money. It's the title of her book, which is not about money. It's about surrender, really. Tosha Silver, she has this thing called the God box, where you take a really pretty box, you decorate it, and then during the 2 week wait, that would be my sort of alteration there. Whenever there's something that you're worrying about, you write it down and you put it in the God box, and you ask that higher power to sort of take charge and fix it for you. And then you let it go. Um, what I love to do myself are surrender rituals. So I might create an altar. I might dance a little bit to really get into that emotion that I'm feeling. And then with my altar, I light a candle, for example, and I ask for a sign or guidance. So I literally say out loud, I don't know how to deal with this. Please show me the next step. Give me a sign. Give me some guidance. Um, there's not a particular god or goddess that I'm addressing. I'm just putting it out there to whoever is listening. Can even be my intuition, right? Give me a sign, and then I let it go, and I just see what happens during that day or the next day, whatever comes to me. Maybe it's a passage in a book, something I see on television. I might draw a card the next morning and get some information or a beautiful message. Something always comes when you open it up to that higher power. Um, I love to work with mantras as well. And this is something I've mentioned on the podcast before. So, one that really worked for me is please change me into one who is open to the possibility that this treatment might work. That was the one I used during my fertility treatment because I felt that I was so focused on the fact that this, might not work. Uh, and like I didn't want to force myself to feel super positive about this, but I also, I was so much stuck in the negative that I really wanted to feel a little glimpse of hope again. And that's what helped, that mantra really helped. That's what that mantra really did for me is please change me into one, again, that higher power, whoever he or she or it is. Please change me into one who is open to the possibility that this might actually work, that I might actually get pregnant. And without forcing myself to be positive, I could feel just an opening within me, the opening of hope. You can also, just before you go to bed at night, take it with you in your dreams and say, okay, I don't know how to deal with this. I am so lost. I'm so anxious. In my dreams, let my dreams show me the way. What's something that I can do for me right now that will help me feel better? A final thing that can really help you during a time like this is community. And I'm not talking about your friends, your family. I'm talking about a place where people can really hold space for you as you try to practice these things and as you really navigate this really fragile time. I found this beautiful quote on Instagram. I have a lot of quotes today. I prepared really well. I found a beautiful quote on Instagram. It's from someone called Lexi Florentina. And she says that trauma, the experience of trauma, is actually something that happens in the relational field of what was and what was not, how we were tended to when in pain, and how our need for support was met or not met in the aftermath of overwhelm. So it's really about feeling that in everything that you're going through, there's people who are able to meet you there just as you are right now. We're not trying to change you, but who are there with compassion and open heart to carry you so that you can lean back a little bit and feel heard and seen and supported. I found that for myself during my fertility journey in the groups I started, the women's circles for women facing unwanted childlessness. There was really a space where I could let my guard down, share what was going on within me without, having to fear that I was putting too much negative stuff on everyone's plate because everyone knew what I was going through. And there was so much lightness that was created through that, so much support. It really gave me different perspectives on my fertility journey. So if you feel like, the things I discussed today, that you want to start working with them, but you don't know where to start, I'm actually starting a new 3-month group program called Healing Fertility on May 5th. And I've set that up in the format of a women's circle, partly. So there will be 4 group sessions with a maximum of 10 women, where I will create that space for you to be seen and held and supported. And there will also be 8 additional pre-recorded sessions where I will share these techniques with you and guide you through exercises, not just for the 2-week wait, but for your entire fertility journey. If you want, this is optional, but I also always connect everyone in the group who wants to a sharing partner. So you have someone who can hold space for you in between sessions. So that means that, you probably just exchange WhatsApp messages and then maybe you meet on WhatsApp once a week, or you just exchange voice notes where it's not about developing a new friendship. It's about having a space where you can really share what's happening with you right now without someone trying to fix you, um, but where someone is just there to listen with an open heart. I myself am also available throughout the group program on WhatsApp from Monday to Friday to answer any of your questions or give you additional support with all of these things. So it's really designed to make sure that you are not going through this by yourself, but that you feel, that you have someone to fall back on. If you sign up before Monday, April 22nd, so that's this Monday, I will throw in my online course, Cyclical Fertility, as well. So that's a course I designed around your cycle And for every phase of your cycle, there's exercises there that you can use. So there is a whole module, module 4, on the 2-week wait, and there's a ritual there that you can use, a guided meditation. I have a dance exercise for surrender, journaling prompts. So it's really designed to help you implement all of these things that I discussed today. And that's the bonus if you sign up for before Monday, April 22nd. As a bonus, I will also give every participant a free one-on-one abdominal therapy session online. So that's a consult of about an hour where we'll go through your medical history. I will design an abdominal therapy protocol that's tailored to your unique situation. And I will teach you the self-massage practice that you can use to really increase the nerve, blood, lymphatic flow and energetic flow to your belly, something that's really good for digestion and for fertility as well. So you can find more information on thatfertileFeeling.com/healing-fertility. I will put it in the show notes as well. If you have any questions about this, about the episode, about anything else, you can always reach out to me on Instagram at thatfertileFeeling or email me at francoise@thatfertileFeeling.com. I always love to hear from you and I always get back to you and hope to see you back next week for the menstrual phase. Bye bye.